The title of his talk to us tonight appears in the form of a question: what makes images unacceptable? And suggests to those familiar with Professor Rancière's work a kind of iconoclasm of iconoclasm. The relation between unrepresentability and what in the last chapter of The Future of the Image he calls holy terror. I think it fair to say that we can expect a critical inquiry, a disturbance in the distribution of the sensible, and perhaps even a demonstration of what the concept of dissensus might look like in action. Please join me in welcoming to PNCA and to Portland, Professor Jacques Rancière.
So the meaning of the unacceptable is a matter of dispositive of visibility. An image never is a solitary reduplication of a reality. It is an element in a chain that weaves a sense of reality or a common sense. What I call a common sense, it is a community of sensible data, things that are supposed to be given to the eyes of everybody, modes of perception of these things, significations that are given to them. So a common sense can be described as a form of being together, relying on a certain community between things and words. So the media system is a common sense of this sort, a space-time dispositif, framing common givens, common ways of looking at them and of making sense of them. The point is not to denounce the reality hidden behind this frame. It is to build over realities or over forms of common sense, which means over settings of time and space, over communities of words and things, of perceptions and meanings. This is what I call a dissensus. Dissensus doesn't merely mean conflict, just as consensus doesn't merely mean an agreement between persons or groups. This agreement presupposes a specific distribution of the visible, the sayable, and the thinkable. Consensus frames a reality that is supposed to be one and the same for everybody. Consensus says that, well, we may have conflicting interests, aspirations, and values, but that we are obliged, nonetheless, to agree that the given is given, and that we have to look at him and name it just as it is. This agreement draws a clear-cut separation between what is given and what is not, what is in and what is out, what is real and what is fictional or ideological or utopian. Art and politics begin, I think, when this monopoly of reality is questioned, when there is a dispute on what is given, on the name that can be given, and the sense that can be made of it. Creating forms of dissensus, I think, is the work of fiction. Making fiction doesn't mean telling stories. It means constructing an other sense of reality, another set of connections between spaces and times, between words and visual forms, spoken words and written words, between an here and an elsewhere, a now and a then, etc., etc. In this sense, the sound of silence is a fiction, Shoah is a fiction, S21 is a fiction. The question is not whether one real or another has to be fictionalized or not. From my point of view, the question is how it is fictionalized. What kind of common sense is framed by this fictionalization? So long as the question of the image is put in terms of reduplication of a real, the dissensual work of fiction is short-circuited by the philosophical criticism of appearance or the religious blame on idolatry. The true question for me is not, are we allowed to make a picture of this? Are we allowed to show it to viewers? It is, what kind of community are we framing by constructing one or another connection of images? What kind of beings does it deal with? And to what kind of beings is it addressed? What kind of gaze, what kind of consideration do we try to provoke? This shift in the approach to the notion of the image is also, for me, a shift in the notion of politics of the images. The classic use of the unacceptable image presupposed a kind of straight line from the intolerable in the image to the understanding of the intolerable reality that was its cause, and a decision to act in order to change that reality. But such a connection between representation, knowledge, and action was a mere presupposition. The unbearable image got, in fact, its power from the obviousness of the theoretical scenario and the strength of the political forms of political activism that it was supposed to bring about. The serious bringing war home of Martha Rosler was convincing because bringing war home was already the slogan of a strong political movement in the United States. The weakening of those scenarios and of those movements resulted in a divorce. The power of the image came to be opposed to the capacity of understanding and to the decision to act. In that context, the critique of the spectacle and the discourse on the unrepresentable became prominent, and with them, a general suspicion about the political power of any image. So skepticism came as a result of an excessive faith, I would say. It came as a result of the belief in a straight line linking affection, understanding, and action. This is why I think a new trust in the political capacity of the images might be based on a critique of that strategic schema. Artistic images don't bring weapons in the struggle. They help frame new configurations of the visible and the thinkable, which also means a new landscape of the possible. But they help it precisely to the extent that they don't anticipate their signification and their effect. Here is one photograph from the series WB, made by the French photographer Sophie Ristel-Huber. It looks like a quiet pastoral landscape. But like all the images in this series, it represents an Israeli blockade on the Palestinian road. Sophie Ristel-Huber made an artistic and which is also political choice. She did not photograph the big wall that is the embodied policy of a state and the media icon of the Middle East problem. Instead, she photographed those little blockades on minor country roads, and she did it mainly from above, from the point of view that makes the little rocks on the road nearly disappear, become part of the landscape itself. This means that she photographed not the emblem of a war, but its tracks and scars on the landscapes, the way in which the war becomes part of it. In such a way, she produces, I think, a shift from the worn-out affect of indignation to the little and perhaps more promising affect of curiosity. Curiosity, attention, those words point to, for me, to another politics of the perceptions of the affects. I would say a politics based on the distance of the gaze, the resistance of the visible, and the indecidability of the effect, or rather unpredictability of the effect. Images change our gaze and the landscape of the visible to the extent, I think, that they are not anticipated by their meaning and don't anticipate their effect. This could be the quite provisory conclusion of this inquiry into the unacceptable in the images. Thank you very much.